In the last two bear markets, Bitcoin dumped, creating a local bottom in February, rallied on into March, and then dumped even harder. Is the exact same thing about to play out? In today's video, we'll be talking about this, going over the most recent Bitcoin price action, and I'll be taking you through some of my trades because regardless of what Bitcoin and crypto does, there are plenty of trading opportunities in this market. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. Without further ado, let's jump right into the video. At the time of recording this video, Bitcoin is currently sitting just above $70,000. Last week, we had a pretty significant dump down to below $60,000, and you can see we got a little bit of relief shortly after, a $10,000 bounce. Now, this bounce did not give anyone real opportunities to long unless you were planning on knife catching. I didn't personally take any long trade on this rally, but what I want you to consider if you're new to the channel is that I have been shorting Bitcoin since around $97,000. So far, I've secured around $330,000 in profit on this trade, still holding out an additional $100,000 in unrealized profits because I do think that Bitcoin can ultimately bleed lower, but there are some new opportunities in this market that I wanted to discuss. Keep in mind, if Bitcoin is to just significantly pump here, my stop loss is at break even. So worst case scenario, this is a $300,000 profit trade and I move on to the next trade. What I want you to understand is this is a huge demand zone for Bitcoin. So it did make sense that we got a significant reaction here, leaving a pretty big wick to the downside. Something I would like you to pay attention to though, before we get way too excited, is the fact that we had a pretty massive wick right here before we had those tariff capitulation lows, and you can see that it didn't mean that Bitcoin just has to absolutely go up. The reason I mention this is because there's a lot of TA gurus out there that will say, guys, this is a massive bullish hammer candle. Just because there's a big wick to the downside, it doesn't mean that we have to immediately pump. But I am actually currently longing a crypto token. And that token is actually HYPE. I just entered a HYPE trade within my community. You can see that I'm currently up around $4,000 on this trade because I do think that if Bitcoin is to continue higher here, we're likely going to see altcoins start to slowly outperform. The reason I say this is because if we take a look at Bitcoin dominance, we got a pretty significant red weekly close here. Now we'll have to see how it actually closes because there's still around 11 hours until the close. But if Bitcoin dominance is to get rejected at its bull market support band, this means that altcoins are technically outperforming Bitcoin. Now, something to really understand here is just because altcoins are outperforming Bitcoin, it doesn't mean that the market isn't going down. Sometimes this essentially means that altcoins are dropping less than Bitcoin is dropping. However, I wanted to take you through what I introed the video with, and that is the fact that Bitcoin does like to dump and then create a local bottom in February of the bear market years, only to go ahead and get another pump, creating a local top and then dumping even harder. So let's take a look at the previous bear market. You can see here that Bitcoin topped at around $69,000. Now, if we take a look at the price action in this bear market, we had a pretty significant move down, and then you can see that this local low was created near the end of January, February. Then we had a little bit of a counter trend rally, and this rally brought us all the way up 43%, only to go ahead and move even lower in the bear market. In the previous bear market, we saw very, very similar price action. So Bitcoin went ahead and dumped, and you can see that right around this February timeframe, which actually coincides almost perfectly with this cycle, we created a low, a pretty aggressive low, down to around $6,000. And from the wick low in February, we managed to get approximately a 100% move to the upside. That's a pretty significant pump. So what would this look like this time around? Because Bitcoin did drop aggressively going into a pretty big supply zone. And if we are to get the exact same kind of rally, it would look something like this. Let's assume it's somewhere in between the two. So between 100 and 40% rally, this could actually bring Bitcoin all the way up to its bull market support band once more. Now, this bull market support band does pose as resistance in the bear market. You can see that when we wicked into it, we got rejected immediately. And as a matter of fact, this was when I went short, basically at the perfect top on this initial counter trend rally. By the way, if you want access to all of my trades, whether I go short on Bitcoin, whether I go long, you do have the first link in my description down below. If you click this link, you'll get access to my free group. You just have to DM me the keyword 2026 on Telegram, and I would be more than happy to onboard you into my group where I share all of my own personal trade setups. And with that, I'm also not a financial advisor. Please understand that I'm just a guy on the internet sharing all of his own personal trades and his overall market analysis. Now that we got that out of the way, I want to see Bitcoin get a more significant move to the upside. That is what I'm gunning for, simply because it would be nice to provide relief across the market. Now, you guys know I'm not one for hopium. I haven't talked about altcoins basically all cycle, and I'm actually shorting Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin is to go lower, I do stand to benefit quite a bit because my entry is literally at $97,000. So we go lower, I am more than happy to take some profits. But history would suggest that we can see a little bit more upside here before we are to continue to roll over into this bear market year. Now, what you'll want to pay attention to is everyone on Twitter, as soon as this rally potentially continues, they're going to get extremely bullish and they're going to say, guys, this is the confirmed bottom. The super cycle is here. We are holding on to support. I beg to differ. If you've been watching me for a while, I try to give you a realistic view of the market. I trade the market that's right in front of me, and I try to accumulate Bitcoin near those bear market lows. Speaking of which, I want to bring this to your attention. If we take the bear market lows from previous cycles to the highs, it gives us a good gauge as to where Bitcoin could potentially bottom out. So if we take a fib here from these previous bear market lows all the way up to the highs, you can see that usually the next bear market lows are somewhere between the golden pocket all the way down to the 0.786 Fibonacci level. Now, this wasn't highlighted by me. This was actually highlighted by a very good trader called Trader Main. I would highly recommend you check out his content, but it is an interesting level because this does tend to happen time and time again in the bear market. So what would that look like this time around? From the bear market lows, let's take this level. You'll notice that if Bitcoin were to retrace to that level, it would actually put Bitcoin all the way down to approximately between $50,000 and $40,000. And if we do make it below that 0.786 Fibonacci level, well, that would actually give us an opportunity to buy Bitcoin sub 40K. Now, don't shoot the messenger, but this has repeated time and time again. And up until this date, there's no reason to believe that the 4-year cycle will not repeat. So if you ask me, I am a buyer at these levels, and I will be very, very vocal about when I'm buying for the next bull market. If you stick around and you watch this kind of content during the bear market when everyone leaves the market, I can assure you that the next bull market will be a fantastic ride for you. And I hope that I can guide you along the way. Now, something that's a little bit concerning here, the stock market. What you'll notice here is the stock market is essentially looking very, very similar to how it looked before we dropped when we had that tariff capitulation. Just slow chopping to the upside, holding the bull market support band, and then boom. And the moves just seem to get smaller and smaller. This time around, we are managing to hold on to the bull market support band. Maybe we get another push higher, but if the stock market is to go ahead and push higher and then reject, well, ultimately, we know how that bodes over for crypto, because last week, the stock market essentially dropped, like 3% from the highs at one point, and crypto simply could not handle it. Now, let's take a look at the Bitcoin exchange liquidation map. You can see here that on the one-day time frame, people are considering to go long, but on the 30-day time frame, there is still a good amount more shorts in this market. And if we take a look at the 1-year time frame, it paints a very clear picture. A lot of people are currently shorting this market, and myself included, to be fair, because I'm still holding my short from around $97,000. But I am no longer stressed about this position. Over the past few months, I've been making multiple 6 figures on these trades. I've taken a couple of losses, of course, but ultimately, I do think that if Bitcoin is to consolidate here, we can get another little push higher, and this would catch a lot of people off guard. Then, when Bitcoin ideally moves a little bit higher, everyone will get very excited again, and I will be vocal about entering a new short in this market because there is a chance that we go ahead and get that opportunity. Something else I want you to consider. On Friday, we did get around 330 million worth of inflows for the Bitcoin spot ETFs. So let's see if this can continue or if it's just temporary relief and then Bitcoin goes ahead and moves lower. And Financial Times came out and posted an article saying Bitcoin is still about $69,000 too high. Typical bear market FUD. But to be perfectly clear, I don't think that this low that we saw for Bitcoin is the bear market bottom. Something else that you want to consider here is the fact that Bitcoin typically takes time to form these bottoms. How many times have you heard me say on the channel, bottoms take time to form? In every single bear market, it hasn't been a wick and then V-shaped recovery and then all of a sudden we're in a bull market. Usually, we chop around these lows for a while, we get a little bit of an impulsive move, ideally above the bull market support band, then we manage to hold it as support, and then we are off to the races. The thing is, no one can time the perfect bear market bottom, but I will let you know as soon as I go ahead and start dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin from a spot portfolio perspective near those bear market lows. The lower we go, the more that I will accumulate. But to be perfectly clear, I have not accumulated any Bitcoin quite yet because I do think that we are likely to move lower. Another metric you can use here, if we take a look at the weekly time frame, is the 200-week moving average. Usually, Bitcoin does also tap into this level in the bear market, and this would put Bitcoin down to around $58,000. Again, I don't think that this would be the bear market low. Ultimately, I do think that we could bleed a little bit lower, but at these levels, I would consider accumulating Bitcoin. To be perfectly clear, I will likely start accumulating some spot Bitcoin slowly when we get back to sub $60,000. But in the short term, as we started this video off with, I actually think that a continued relief rally is possible for Bitcoin. And so if this is the case, perhaps Bitcoin can get another $5,000 to $10,000 move to the upside. Only time will tell. Can we get some wicks lower to form out a little bit more of a bottom and then go? Perhaps. And maybe I shouldn't have drawn it like that because I don't think that Bitcoin is making an all-time high this year. Some of you super cycle guys may believe that, and a couple of things to quickly go over before we wrap up this video. Supposedly, Trump's White House will be meeting on Bitcoin and crypto market structure in 2 days. This could be a significant meeting, or it could just be another nothing burger. And I also want to bring this to your attention. Jim Cramer essentially came out recently and said that President Trump is buying Bitcoin for the US Strategic Reserve during the crash week, which was last week. I heard at 60K, he's going to fill the Bitcoin reserve.
Do you think that the president is going to fill the Bitcoin reserve?
I don't know. That will
that's
be
what I heard.
big
60.
deal.
I heard at 60 he's going to fill the Bitcoin reserve. You better cover.
If you know anything about Jim Cramer, usually he's wrong. And that sums up today's quick video. Bitcoin is getting a little bit of relief after hitting $59,000, but the real question is, can this relief extend? We've seen it in previous bear markets where Bitcoin can get a nice rally into March to create a local top and then go ahead and roll over. Let's see how the price action develops. I will continue to trade the market that is right in front of me in anticipation to be able to accumulate some more Bitcoin near those bear market bottoms. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. I have my bluff and leverage trading tutorial right here, and I'll see you in the next video.